Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
The appointment of an acting DNI brings up bigger questions about how the intelligence community is led and coordinated. That includes what kind of experience that role demands and how long an acting structure can hold. Here with insight on what has to go right now is former FBI special agent and national security expert, Rich Kolko. Rich, it is great to have you on the show. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks, Terry. Glad to be here.
President Trump has tapped Bill Pulte, who currently leads the Federal Housing Finance Agency, to replace Tulsi Gabbard in an acting role as the Director of National Intelligence. Before we dip into how that process might work, would you just remind us and our listeners what the DNI actually is responsible for on a day-to-day basis?
Well, the DNI does several big things, but the biggest they do are policy and oversight of the 18 intelligence community agencies. And of course, they prepare and deliver the president's daily brief. This is the threat brief that covers a variety of areas, and they go to the White House and provide that brief to the President of the United States.
And by law, this position is supposed to be filled by someone with deep national security experience. What sorts of background would you say typically matter most for a person filling this position?
Well, if you look back through previous directors of national intelligence, they were senior officials and had worked their way up in various agencies of the intelligence community. Several of them were military, CIA. They had that background. They did operations at the entry level, worked their way up to senior executive service, and then were appointed DNI. So they typically had a career full of experience, understanding operations, understanding briefings, understanding budgets, writing reports, and all the things that make an intelligence officer an intelligence officer.
And the 18 agencies that they supervise cross a variety of federal departments, correct?
Yeah, military, National Security Agency, FBI, Department of Energy, even the Drug Enforcement Administration is part of it. Some of the ones people aren't as familiar with, the National Reconnaissance Office. Those are the folks who put all the satellites into orbit for national security means. National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. They look at that satellite imagery. They provide a lot of the graphics and maps used by the military and others. Of course, the NSA, who does the collection overseas. We've got the CIA, number one, and the DIA, which is the Defense Intelligence Agency, which is kind of a partner to the CIA, but more on the military side.
So that's a pretty complex structure, pretty challenging diplomacy, if you will, to manage all of those different directorates, all of whom have pretty senior political appointees as well. How does the DNI integrate all of the intel from those agencies into a coherent daily picture?
Well, that's a key word there. You said integrate. So you've got these different agencies that are providing their intelligence and information that they've worked up, analyzed, assessed, and provide that up through the chain, ends up with the DNI. So they've got sort of competing interests. And part of what the DNI has to do is determine which ones of those briefs are most important, has to put them in order, has to assess them, determine which ones I want to go forward with, and end up in that presidential daily brief for what could be various action or activity conducted by various U.S. government agencies, including, as we see now, the military conducting operations in the Iran theater.
So let's circle back then to Mr. Pulte's acting position. The president was very clear it would be an acting appointment. Walk us through how that changes things, both in terms of the authority that this individual will hold while acting in that position, the role of the Senate. How does it all play out?
Well, in the acting role, I believe they can serve for up to a year without going through Senate confirmation. Certainly, this is a tricky time right now with the midterms just a few months away. Getting a confirmation through right now could be difficult. It turns out the president has said that Mr. Pulte will also hold on to his current job, in essence, making DNI, I hate to say this, but a part-time role, which just seems very difficult right now with the war, with all the ongoing negotiations. Certainly the information that our negotiators take to the negotiating table works its way through the intelligence community, and that means through DNI. So that needs full attention. But if you look through the page of biographies, on DNI's website right now. The deputies that are in there are a very group of seasoned, experienced intelligence officers. So if Mr. Pulte is able to utilize and rely on those personnel to help guide him as he has to make some very important decisions, not only in the future, but immediately, then I think that'll go a long way. If he chooses to do it in his own way without utilizing the expertise offered to him now, it'll make the job certainly more complex.
Rich Kolko is a retired U.S. Navy commander, Navy pilot, and retired FBI special agent. Rich, you just mentioned the DNI being a part-time role. Clearly, we are in current operations. There's a lot of intel going back and forth. What matters most for him in this leadership role? He's trying to hold down the Federal Housing and Finance Agency and DNI. What does he need to prioritize in the DNI role?
Well, he's got the policy and oversight, and that includes budget matters for the intelligence community. I think about $80 billion a year. So he's got to help divvy up that money among the intelligence agencies. So we're all, fighting for their share of the pie. And that's a part of, what the DNI has to do. I think right now, operationally, obviously, he has to prepare the negotiators who are working on the Iran issue with the best most current intelligence available and accurate intelligence. And he has to provide this to the president so the president can guide his negotiators on what they can and can't do. We see Iran reconstituting some of their capabilities. That has to be accurately displayed for the negotiators. And of course, we've got the ongoing war in Ukraine, which just won't seem to go away and always threatens to spread into neighboring countries, which are NATO members. Also problematic. We've actually seen a rise in that theater as well over just the last couple of weeks. So DNI has to be aware of that. And there's always the concern that China will make a move on Taiwan while we're so busy with other areas of the world. So the DNI has a full plate, has to prepare these presidential daily briefs, cyber threats, terrorist threats, war threats, a variety of things. President Trump has taken less of these briefs than previous presidents. Don't forget, DNI is a relatively new agency, just formed after 9/11. But presidents going backwards, Biden, Obama, and Bush had that presidential daily brief on a more regular basis than President Trump, who chooses to get his intelligence through different venues or avenues.
In your prior life, you've been a practitioner in the intelligence community. How important would you say it is, the climate and the priorities that are set from the top?
Critical. You don't want people running rampant or rogue. We've got to have a unified direction that we're going. While the DNI wants competing analysis on some of the same problems or some of the same issues, that helps them make decisions. When you get two different agencies looking at one problem, they may come back with a different analysis of that issue. And then the DNI has to decide, which one they want to use or go forward with or help order additional analysis so that it resolves itself and they have an accurate picture. So I think those are all things that DNI has to work on. And at this point, certainly working in I guess I'll say it again, a part-time status right now, he's going to have to rely heavily on his deputies. And again, those deputies look very, very qualified. So if he does that, I think we're in good shape. If they go a different route, it'll make it much more challenging.
There's been periodic discussion, maybe even more so over the last 18 months, about whether the DNI structure still adds value, whether it is still able to solve the problem that it was created for post 9/11. From your perspective, is it still working? Is this a way to maybe phase out the DNI and say, we really don't need it much anymore?
That's a great question. When DNI was originally formed in the post 9/11 days, it was meant to be a very, very small agency with just, I think, literally 100 or 200 people, not doing daily analysis, but just relying on the analysis of the various intelligence community agencies. They've grown to nearly 2,000 people. So there's some duplication of effort now being done at DNI as well as some of the intelligence community agencies. And I know that DNIs have looked for ways to reduce that. They want to kind of get back to what it was originally designed to do. And I guess potentially we could head that direction. That's certainly a decision of the president and Congress together. But again, these decisions are difficult to make right now while we're in the middle of, military operations. So that there's a time and a place for that. This just might not be the time and the place.
And as this process moves forward, assuming Mr. Pulte actually takes on the role and the responsibilities, what will you be watching for to know whether or not this current acting responsibility is being well cared for?
Well, I think hopefully getting some resolution in the Iran operations. We've heard that the negotiations, they've come close several times, but nothing has been signed or approved. And this is an ongoing issue in this Strait of Hormuz, the nuclear issue. The president and the negotiators he sends to the table have to have the most accurate information, have to be able to provide the necessary intelligence so that something can get signed, because clearly we don't want that to continue ongoing. And certainly in the Strait of Hormuz, there's going to be just a major effect on the world economy. It needs to be resolved. And the president's made it clear Iran's not going to have a nuclear weapon. So they've got to get the intelligence necessary for the president and the president's negotiators to be able to sit at that table and get that done.
Rich Kolko is a retired U.S. Navy commander, Navy pilot, and retired FBI special agent. Mr. Kolko, thanks so much for jumping in with me this morning.
Thanks for having me on, Terry.
We'll post this interview at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Listen to the Federal Drive on your schedule. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.